This workshop is how to successfully navigate, advocate, and negotiate within the public service system. And it's done by the Utah Parent Center. And we decided to do this workshop because the Parent Center feels that it's important that, that parents learn how to do good negotiation skills. And my name's Linda Smith. And I'm a parent of children with disabilities. I have 4 sons with varying disabilities, from medical disabilities and physical disabilities to those with hidden disabilities like learning disabilities and attention deficit. So I've had a variety of experiences throughout the classroom, and now they're in the adult system. And they have turned out to be successes pretty well. We still go through tribulations in the adult world with my one son, but it goes pretty well. So we're happy with our children, and it did make a difference getting involved within the school system, and you have to get involved in adult services. And so it's important to get involved in both of those. The Utah Parent Center is made up of parent consultants that are parents who have children with disabilities, and we believe in educating parents so that they will be able to advocate for themselves and be able to help their children with disabilities. And we believe that it's very important that you get involved as parents and help your child, because you can make a difference in your child's success if you get involved with your child. And that's why all of us work here at the Utah Parent Center. So, what is interest-based negotiation? We decided to pick it because we believe that interest-based negotiation is important. Do you believe that others can get along working together? We believe that interest-based negotiation is working together. Would you like your issues and concerns considered and heard? To solve tough and challenging problems. And we all have them. We have them with doctors, we have them at school, we have them in several areas. Would you like to build good working relationships with professionals and to feel in control of your emotions? That's a hard one, especially when you're talking about your child with a disability. And do you believe that 2 conflicting parties can learn to work together in solving their problems and resolving conflicts? I got involved in interest-based negotiation as a young mother when I got involved up at the Utah State Capitol in public policy advocacy. I felt that it was important because you were working with these legislators who came in all ages, and many of them had never worked with children with disabilities. They were farmers, dairy farmers, they were ranchers, they were insurance salesmen, bankers. Very few were teachers, very few were of the age that they had gone to school with children with disabilities. And quite frankly, the issues that I was advocating for were not that sexy to the different legislators up on Capitol Hill. And so I had to figure out a way to get the legislators to listen to me. And at first it was really difficult. I would chase them everywhere and keep on saying, but you have to fund our children, it's really important. And then somebody talked to me about interest-based negotiation and said, have you ever read this book, Getting to Yes? And it's out of Harvard University, and it was a book of how to get individuals that really weren't interested in your issues to go from saying no to yes. And I read the book and started using interest-based negotiation with Utah state legislators. And one of the great success stories I had is we had this Utah state legislator who he was a dairyman, and everybody hated him that had soft skills, advocacy skills, that liked disability issues. In fact, there had been some stories that he had not been real friendly to people that had had children with disabilities. And trying to get him to talk to you up on Capitol Hill was really hard. He never had time for you. He wouldn't take time to come out and talk to you. while he was up at the Capitol. He wouldn't give you 2 minutes of his time. And everyone was frustrated. He just wouldn't give you any time. Well, we found out that his big priority was his farm and his dairy cattle. And we found out that if we went down to his dairy farm at Utah County and walked around with him and saw how he did it, he would spend 3 hours talking to us about our issue. It was great. We went down there 4 or 5 times talking about special education funding and why it was so important to children in special education. And he would listen to us, and he would talk and talk to us. He had cows that his wife had put around the house that were real cute. We started buying little cows as we'd see them and taking them to the house. And we'd talk 3 or 4 hours with him, and he'd just talk on and on and on. Well, the result was he was on the education committee, and he became our best friend. He would come out at the state legislature for anything for us. He would fund any issue that the two of us asked for. He became a real advocate for children with disabilities, and we ended up giving him an award, the Heroes on the Hill, for his public policy advocacy. Now, what was the difference? Finding out what his interests were. And instead of saying, well, this person just hates everybody, starting to see that 2 conflicting parties could work together and care about each other. So public policy advocacy and interest-based negotiation does work. It's finding out the interests of other individuals. What is interest-based negotiation? It's working together creates a process that leads to a satisfactory result for all individuals involved. That's the first thing I like about it. A result that's good for everyone, instead of everybody walking away angry. It improves, not damages, relationships. You don't go up there and say, you're going to do it my way or no way. It develops new solutions that are better than either party can come up with on their own. And I love that idea too, that you can come up with creative solutions that nobody else thought of before. Why do you go into interest-based negotiation versus any other type of negotiation? It's when you finally say, our position is less attractive, working together, and their position is less attractive, that working together we can collaborate, we can work together, and we can develop new ideas and better alternatives than if we continue to fight. And we're not going to get results that way. And that's the difference. There's a process to interest-based negotiation. And we're going to go through the formal process today. But I want you to know the great thing about interest-based negotiation is you don't have to, when you're doing an individualized education plan, you don't have to sit there and go, okay, we're going to plan an hour and a half and go through interest-based negotiation to do our IEP. You can take any one of these steps that you need where the communication process is breaking down and use that step and put together where your IEP isn't working. So we'll do the formal plan today, and then you will have those steps for when you need them. The steps for interest-based negotiation are first, seek to understand. The next is determine interests. After that is to tell your own story. And there really is an art to telling your own story, and I learned that up at the legislature too. Invent options. Evaluate criteria. Consensus and commitment, and implement decisions and monitor progress. And a lot of times we forget that final step, and it's a very important step. I want to caution you though, you choose which road and direction you would like to go in whenever you walk into a meeting, whether you're talking to a doctor about your child's medical problems, whether you are going to go in and talk to a teacher at school, or whether you're talking to an adult professional about services. Now, I'm going to ask you, what type of actions are taken when you have bad communication? And would somebody be willing to come up and scribe for me? Jenny, would you be glad to come up? One of the things I didn't tell you is that I also have disabilities, and I am spelling challenged, or you could say that I am creative in my spelling. So I always like to have somebody else scribe for me so the words come out right. Okay, can you think of some ways that people handle challenges when they're not handling them right? What do they do? I can think of one which would be like arguing. You argue back and forth and get arguing. Can the audience think of some others? Jody.
I think people stop listening to each other. Like, you only want your point of view to be heard, and so you don't listen to other people.
Excellent. Stop listening. Can you think of some others? Yes.
Defensive, becoming highly defensive.
Oh, becoming highly defensive. You kind of put your arms up. You see the body language go, don't you? And you see the faces. What else?
Sometimes people walk away. They don't stay in the conversation.
Thank you. How many people walk away? Can that be frustrating? Very good comment. What else?
Well, sometimes you already know what the other person's going to say, and you don't want to hear it because you already think you know the answer, and then you just don't listen at all.
Okay, excellent point, Rebecca. You assume you know what's going to be said.
Yeah.
You've already made up your mind. That's an excellent point. Good answer. Jody.
Sometimes people just get mean. Like, their words get, you criticize, or sometimes
Oh.
swearing comes out. Or
Very good. They're critical, or they come back and they kind of like, they slash you in the heart. Where if you say something about me, I'm going to come back and I'm going to say something about you. Have you ever had a teacher say, well, I'm the one that's knowledgeable, or somebody else, I'm the one that knows best, or a parent?
The expert.
They're the expert. Or have you ever done that to somebody? Become the expert. I have the power. And so it's kind of a power play.
Sometimes you're only interested in your own perspective.
Oh, good one.
And you close off other people's perspectives, and you don't listen to their points of view.
Okay, sometimes you're only interested in your own perspective or what you want. Nice answer. Any others? Those are all excellent answers. Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate it. Those are all good. How about blame or avoidance, just avoiding the issue? All of those different things, we have been in meetings where that's happened. Or, oh, we're not going to discuss that today. Have we heard that? All of those different things. So what does a bad relationship or communication look like? It's all alternative roads that can be taken, and what the other party or you yourself decide to take. And it's anger, arguing, blame, control, power, avoidance, silence, or withdrawal. In fact, in the book, The Fifth Discipline, there's what's called the ladder of influence. And Peter Singe and Rick Ross talk about it. And they say that you come in and he talks about one person starts to make an explanation and the other person interrupts. Well, what happens? That person that interrupted the other person assumes that they're just rude or they don't want to listen. So they're not going to continue their explanation. So then they react, and the conversation starts to break down. So both of them have this observable data. One thinks the one's rude, the other one thinks the other one's rude because now they won't finish their explanation. So you've got both parties breaking down as far as conversation. Then they have both selected data just on that one interpretation of the conversation. And then they add meaning to it. Well, that person was rude. Or, well, how come that person won't keep on explaining? I didn't mean to interrupt them. And so they're adding meaning to what's happened in this one little conversation. Then they make assumptions. Then they draw their conclusions. Well, if this is the way the conversation's going to go, and it always goes this way when I talk to this person, I'm not going to bother. And then they adopt beliefs. I'm never going to get along with this individual, or I'm never going to get along with this classroom teacher, or I'm never going to get along with this neighbor. They're just a rude person. Forget it. And then they take actions based on those beliefs. Well, the next time I have this meeting with them, they're going to interrupt. So why should I even bother to try to describe what I'm trying to say? Could there be a totally different explanation from the very beginning? Why could they have interrupted the conversation?
Sometimes people just don't understand and they really need to clarify rather than being rude. I
Okay,
mean, maybe they're not being rude, they just really don't understand what your meaning or what your intention is.
okay. Maybe they were excited. Maybe they had attention deficit disorder. I mean, there's a variety of ways that could have gone on instead of go up that ladder of inference. But yet that happens all the time, that we infer, we assume, we adopt a belief based on something that happens in a conversation or miscommunication at the school level with a neighbor, and all of a sudden everything's blown up and we don't have that communication after that. So we need to understand, just like with that legislator that I talked about at the very first, if we hadn't taken the time to say, okay, what is it that he likes? And that took some research. We really had to figure, it took 2 or 3 times talking to him before we could figure out, why does he never stay at the Capitol? Well, he was never staying at the Capitol to talk to anybody because he had to get home early in the evening to milk his dairy cows. And he was never there early in the morning at the Capitol because he was milking his dairy cows. He had some other obligations, but nobody had ever taken the time to understand that about him. Communication requires work. It's not always easy. But our children have a lot of needs in the classroom and with that in the community, with doctors, with medical providers. And so we've got to work to make sure that communication works. And so there's some things we need to do. First of all, we need to have understanding. We need to seek first to understand before seeking to be understood. And that saying comes right out of Utah from Stephen Covey. Seek first to understand before being understood. We need to understand the other person first and see what motivates them. We need to respect, accept the other party or parties as a legitimate partner in the decision-making process. How many times have we talked to somebody and we realize that they don't have any respect for the other individual, or they admit to us that they're going to go into the process and they don't believe it's going to work when they go into the process because they don't respect the other individual. They dislike them, or they don't think that individual's going to respect them. If we can't go in there with respect and trust, we've already ruined the relationship. We have to trust. Maybe the other individual isn't trustworthy, but we have to be trustworthy. I found out at the Utah State Legislature that I didn't have money as a lobbyist. I couldn't take a legislator to Hawaii. I couldn't even pay for jazz tickets or golf or anything else like that the way some of the high-priced legislators could. But what I could do is I could trust that anything that came from my mouth, they knew it was honest, that my statistics were correct, that I was going to tell them the truth, I was going to tell them both sides of the issue, and that they knew that they could fully trust me, that I was reliable and that I was honest. And that was the only thing that I had as my quality and my chips going on at the Capitol, was that they could totally trust me, that I wasn't going to walk out of the meeting and stab them behind the back, no matter how much they would make me angry at times, that I was going to be there and that I would be honest with them. And I would walk in and do it the next time. And that, it's amazing how that can really make a difference in a relationship with people. Power. Rely upon the practice of persuasion, not power to make decisions. That's a hard one. I think, especially of parents of children with disabilities, a lot of times we do want to say, by darn, you're going to do it this way. And if I have to, I'm going to go to so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. And by darn, you're going to do this. And it's hard to sit back and think, okay, we're going to work on this relationship. We're going to build trust. We're not going to do the power thing. And we're going to rely upon persuasion and try to really work on the relationship. Emotion. How hard is it, emotion-wise? I can go into somebody else's individualized education plan, and I'm great, because it's not my child. But when it's my own child, that's the child that nearly died 3 times. That's the child that's had over 24 surgeries. That's the child that you worry, is somebody going to tease him? Is somebody going to care about him? Is he going to get in a fight? Is he going to be successful as an adult? You have all those concerns and weights on your shoulder whenever you go into an individualized education plan. And it's hard with those emotions. But your decisions need to be based on reason and data, not emotion. But I am going to tell you here, it's okay to get emotional. And I always tell parents that when I walk in, I have finally just come to the conclusion, like I shake. If you see this in front of the camera, because of my disabilities, I shake. I also step into a meeting and I say, I may get emotional. And I warn them ahead of time before I get emotional, because this is my child we're talking about. And these are the reasons why I might get emotional. So I state it up front, so the professional knows that I may get emotional and that it's okay. And don't worry if I do get emotional. And it just kind of clears the air, and it really helps. Another part is focus. Be clear on whether the issue at hand is one that's important to the relationship, and stay focused on that issue. I've had parents that have called me at times and they want to talk about the issue that happened the year before in the school classroom, and the year before that in the school classroom, and the year before that. And it's kind of like, well, wait a minute, we can't go back 5 teachers and talk about what happened in kindergarten and resolve that issue. We can only resolve the issue that's happening in the classroom in the 5th grade. So focus on the issue that's happening at the moment, and focus to resolve that issue. Seek to understand. Communication first means listening. And I come from a family, my husband says it's really hard for me to listen, that our family was all born with mouths and no ears. But we do need to seek and listen first before we talk. And we need to be able to understand what the other person is saying. And sometimes a way to slow down that understanding, and I have learned this from Jenny, who's the boss over the parent consultants, to ask clarifying questions. And it's really helped me to be able to, instead of react immediately when somebody says something that I feel threatened or think, wait a minute, you're saying what about my child? I can stop and I have to ask a question that clarifies what they're really saying, because they might not be saying what I think they're saying. So ask clarifying questions. Can you give me more information? Can you describe for me? Can you describe an example of how that would, what that would look like? Can you give me an example of that? Can you tell me about the research? Can you explain more? And for me, I have auditory processing problems. I have a real hard time hearing everything that's said. So if it's really important to me, I say, can you write it down for me? So that I walk out of a meeting or something with a telephone number, with the instructions. And they'll say, oh no, you don't need it written down. You'll remember it. And then I say, no, I really do need it written down. It's really important for me to have it written down. But it just slows the process down. It helps me to understand something that I may not have understood correctly when it was explained to me. Now, the next step after seeking to understand is to determine interests. What are the interests in the groups? How many of you have sat in an individualized education plan meeting before? How many are in that group usually? Jody?
I would say anywhere from 5 or 6 to 10, or I mean, it depends what age the child is, but there's generally several, so you can feel a little bit intimidated, I think, as the parent.
Okay, yeah, you feel intimidated as the parent. What is the overall interest of those IEP meetings? Can you think of what the overall, for the parent, for everybody, what's the overall interest?
The overall interest should be the needs of the child. Your
Perfect.
student, so.
Yeah, it's the child. You're right, Ashley. And sometimes, if things start getting really tense, it's important to draw back for a minute and say, I want you to remember that we have an overall interest, and it's this child here. And you can name your child. And that can be at any point of the meeting. Remind what the interest is. Write it on the board. Write it on the whiteboard. This is our interest today. Are we really meeting the interests of this overall child? Bring a picture with you of your child to give to everybody, so everybody remembers that the overall interest is your child. And that's the point that day. So, what are interests? Interests are defined as the current problem. You're not going to resolve every issue that's going on at school in one individualized education plan meeting, especially the way they do it a lot of times here at in Utah, where they plan your IEP meeting 15 minutes before school starts, before the bell starts. If you know you need a long IEP meeting, call and say, I want a half an hour, I want an hour, and warn them ahead of time that you want more than 15 minutes for your IEP meeting. But interests define the current problem. They're why everybody is motivated to solve the issue, and they're the reasons and answers to the why question. Why is this happening, and what do we need to do about it? How do we resolve it? Steps in learning other parties' interests. First, you want to learn what are the interests of the other party. What would be some of the interests of a general educator in the classroom? Can you think of any interest of the general educator? Rebecca.
Have your child well behaved in their class?
Okay, to have your child that's bouncing off the walls well behaved in your class. What would be an interest of the special educator?
Curriculum, like the special education program for them.
Great. Learning, the child being able to learn the curriculum. Okay, how about a speech pathologist?
To to help your child be able to talk and communicate. It's a lifetime skill that they're going to have.
Okay? Now, think about all three of those interests. Are all three of those interests and interests of the general educator, special educator, and speech and language?
Yes.
They are, aren't they? And yet we tend to put them in different silos for some reason on our IEPs. But they're all an interest for each person and need to be across the board, that everybody is working on them together, and they're interests that you can build on. Get to know the person. So how do you generate interest? First, get to know the person before there's a crisis. Before the IEP meeting, take the time to get to know your special educator. Get the time to know your regular educator, the speech language professional. I always said with the legislative session, that's not the time to get to know a legislator. It's in the summer, it's in the fall, it's in the springtime when they're not stressed. Focus on the interests, not the concerns. Focus on what's important, what their interests are. What can I help you with? They talk about some of the real great moms in special education, those moms that find out what the special educator needs in the classroom, brings extra boxes of Kleenex, brings whatever that special educator needs. I know one of the relationships I built up with one special educator, my son had communication disabilities, and he had a real hard time listening. Well, one year in his self-contained class, they moved him into, they moved the whole classroom into a closet. And the closet had all the pipes running from the school in this closet. And you could hear everything running through the pipes. All this noise. And because I had a relationship with this special educator, and she knew she couldn't go to the principal and complain, when I was talking to her, she said, you know, I want to show you where they've moved our class. Would you mind just being a great parent and maybe calling the principal and maybe talking to some of the other parents about maybe moving this class out of this room since they have communication disorders and they can't hear anyway? I said, no problem. And I was able to, within a week, that class was moved into a regular classroom. So that was something that I could do to help the interests of that special educator. Take a note at the first of the school year to all your teachers. You might have 7 teachers if it's middle school and high school. Talking about your child, websites that the teacher can connect to, and bullet points of accommodations that can be used. Come up with common concerns and interests. And it might be really hard. I mean, I'm a town girl. I sure didn't have anything in common with the dairy farmer, except cow crafts. And I was able to do that. So that worked. Don't judge interests. This is a time to seek to understand the other person. List all the interests on the board so you get all the interests that are needed out. And don't try to find a solution. A lot of times, as soon as all the interests are out there, a speech and language goal, behavior, and curriculum, everybody wants to get a solution immediately. That's not the point. Right now, you're just trying to get conversation going and everybody talking so that everybody's not at each other's throats, and that you will be able to have an ongoing relationship for the entire year with your school teacher or several school teachers. Steps in identifying your interests. You know, professionals were always there saying, we need this, we need that. We so often forget to first thank professionals for help already given. And I have found that that does more than anything else I can do for a professional. If I do thank yous, it just melts them immediately because it's so rare that they receive thank yous. And it's kind of sad that that's the case, that thank yous are given are so uncommon. Explain your interests. Why is it important to you? Be specific. What do you want to accomplish? Describe. Don't accuse. How many times are we immediately accusing somebody of something instead of saying, this is the issue, I'm going to describe it? Tell the truth and don't overdo it. I was a theater major. I love to embellish. It's great. Oh, this terrible thing happened to me. I can make any story sound 10 times worse than it is. So it's really hard for me not to overemphasize. So don't embellish. Defer evaluation, defer commitment. You don't have to commit at this point. And develop legitimacy. You as a parent are the professional. Educators, when they receive their degrees, have to maybe get a half an hour in each disability area, and that's all they hear on it. You get to spend your entire life going to conferences, reading books, going to workshops on a particular disability. You become the educator, the professional on that particular disability, and you have a lot to offer educators that they won't understand or know. Write down your resources where you learn them so you can hand them on to the educators. You have a lot of good information. Telling your own story really is an art. Telling your own story needs to be short and sweet. Once again, I learned that up at the legislature. There it was, by the way, we want you to come up and testify in front of the legislature and tell your sob story, but we want you to do it in 2 minutes. And if you can't do it in 2 minutes, they'll stop you. Whoa. How do you start from a child that, nearly died to now is in 8th grade and get the whole sob story in there in between in 2 minutes or less? It's a little hard. So I came to the conclusion I'm not the most articulate person in the world. Some people, are naturally born to be articulate and they can just do those beautiful, gifted words out of their mouth, but that's not me. So I always say, if I have an important meeting, if I have something that's really important, I want to write it down ahead of time, whether it's a school meeting, whether it's a meeting with a doctor, whatever it is. I now take the time to write it down ahead of time, and I practice it. And I do some bullet points. Otherwise, people come up to me and they go, what were you trying to say? Huh? Because I find that I'm just not clear. Start with the purpose. What is your main purpose? And start out with that purpose in the first paragraph, kind of like a newspaper story. We don't always read the whole article, but we know if we read the first paragraph, we're going to know the main purpose. If people fade out, make sure you started with the main purpose of why you want this IEP, why you want this meeting, why you're having a transition IEP, why you're talking to vocational rehabilitation, why you're talking to the Division of Services for People with Disabilities, why you're talking to your medical doctor. State it in the first paragraph, the first line if you can. Define the problem. Write it down and practice, literally. I really do nowadays. State what you hope to accomplish. Keep it short and to the point. I say, try to be able to say it in a half a page, typed. Use facts and examples. What have you learned about your child's disability? What has happened at home? How is your child behaving? You have a lot of data that you don't realize that you have. For instance, I used to complain, my child has too much homework. This was in 7th through 9th grade. The teachers in middle school would come back and say, every single parent says their child has too much homework in middle school. So I decided to collect data. So I went home and I said, okay, my son arrives home at 2:30. We start homework at 3. We go till 7, literally. Stop. He eats dinner from 7 to 7:30. We then start homework from 7:30 and go till 10. We do this Monday through Thursday. He gets Friday off, and then we do homework from 10 to noon on Saturday. I did this for 3 weeks, recorded exactly the times, and then came back and said, here's my data. My son has too much homework. And they went, whoa, your son has too much homework. And I said, yeah, I wasn't kidding. Now I had the data, and they understood what I was saying and understood, and then I didn't have any problem getting the results I needed as far as getting accommodations on his homework. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of data on behavior. We have a lot of data on speech. We have a lot of data that we see at home every day, frustration, that with 1 week's data, we can bring a lot of data to the classroom as examples of things that have happened. List concerns that deal with the current issue. Notice I said once again, the current issue. What are your concerns? Why is this a concern? What are your facts? Build an argument, just the same way you would be building a case any other way. Use I statements. Say, I feel this way. I feel kind of overwhelmed today when I rocked into this individualized education plan. There are 6 professionals here. You're all sitting behind a desk, and then you have a chair here for me in front of the desk. Could we do something and have you all sit? Could we sit in a circle so I don't feel like I'm being intimidated? Could we say each other's names and get to know each other beforehand? Or I am concerned about. This is how I understand the situation. But notice when I'm saying it's I, then I'm not accusing them of anything. I'm just saying, this is the way I feel. This is the way I perceive it. Watch out for hot words. What are hot words? Anybody have a guess?
You.
You. Yeah, exactly. You did this. Why is that a hot word?
It places blame on someone else.
Good. Places blame on somebody else. They. He. She. Those are all hot words. If you write down your message beforehand and practice, you can go, oops, hot word, take it out. And you can really look at those and look at your communication style. And it's surprising how many hot words we use all the time. Notice I said we use all the time, but I'm talking about myself too. How many hot words I use all the time. The next section is create options. What are options? I have a paper here, and it has on it, I did think, 16 squares. How many squares can you see in here as I'm shaking it? How many possible squares are there?
25.
25, good.
I'm at 26,
26,
27, 28, 29, 30. I can see about 30, maybe there's more.
okay, Jody, how did you see your squares?
Well,
Do you want to come up and show me?
Well, of course, there's the 16, and then if you group by 4s this way, and then you can group 9, so 9 and 9 and 9 and 9, and then of course you have the big one, and then there's 4 right here, and there's 4 right here, and there's 4 right here, and there's 4 right here. How many was that? Are we getting close? That's pretty close.
Okay, I'm going to have you do another thing. Look in between the crosses. Where the cross
There-
lines.
Oh, dang. There's a whole bunch more. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 38, 42, 43, 44, 45.
45. Okay, do you know there's over 100 possibilities?
I got almost half.
And you got almost half. That's fantastic. There's over 100 possibilities out of this paper. That's what options are all about. Options are possible ideas, solutions, starting points, created by 2 or more parties. They are every creative solution you can come up with or think of. They are how different interests are reconciled. I want you to think about it for a second. One of the parent consultants at the Utah Parent Center tells this story. She said she was at an individualized education meeting, and they were talking about bus transportation for her son with cerebral palsy. And he only lived about 5 minutes away from the school. But because he was the first one picked up on the bus, and then they had to go all across the district to pick up the other kids and come back, he would actually be on the school bus for 45 minutes. And they talked, and the IEP team talked and talked and talked about this, and kept on trying to come up with options about how they could solve this problem, because she says, he's 5 minutes away. There's got to be a better solution to this. We've got to come up with a better option. And then finally, as a parent, she said, you know, the regular school bus stops right in front of my house. Couldn't we have somebody help him up in the regular school bus and just have him take the regular school bus each day to school? Nobody had thought of that option, and that's what they came up with. They didn't even have to pay for special education busing, transportation, and he took the regular school bus to school. What a great option. There are many solutions and options that we can come up with if we just take the time to think about them. Options and solutions. We first need to realize as a team that there's more than one solution to a problem. And sometimes as a parent, or as an educator, or as another professional, we get stuck saying, no, this is the way the agency's always done it, and this is the way we're going to do it. Or as a parent, no, I read about this solution, and this is the only program I want for my child. And we're not going to try another program for my child. This is it. So we've got to realize there can be more than one solution, more than one program that will fit our child's needs. Understand that broadening options helps use limited resources wisely. Sometimes agencies do not want to come up with more options because they're afraid they'll be more expensive. But quite frankly, like that one that I just suggested with the busing, sometimes coming up with a variety of options, they can actually be more creative and they can cost less because you're listing a bunch of different options and solutions. And encourage solutions that benefit all and everybody's interests that you have already established. Look, and don't just go with anything. Look for quality and well-researched methods, things that have worked in the past, and separate inventing from decisions. Once again, you're not making decisions here. We're in the inventing mode. And how do you invent? You invent through brainstorming. And we've got to remember that decisions are invented before they are made. You always have to invent them first. So how do you do a good brainstorming method? You seat participants instead of in lines like this. At an IEP meeting, you sit side by side or in a semicircle. Why? So nobody is better than anybody else and everybody feels equal. You clearly state the issue to be resolved. Write it up on the board. Choose a method. How are you going to brainstorm? Is everybody just going to say it out loud? Are you going to have different Post-it notes? I've seen it written that way. And people just write their solution down and post them on the wall. Or maybe you go around one by one so people don't talk over each other, and you keep on doing that until people finish with their solutions. Clarify the ground rules. Nobody makes fun of somebody else's solution. Brainstorm then, and then record the ideas in full view. Has anybody been in a brainstorming session when you start brainstorming and somebody immediately says, "Oh, that's really stupid"? What happens to that brainstorm session?
You don't want to continue.
It dies, doesn't it?
Dies.
It dies immediately. So that's one of the biggies, is to make sure that you don't make fun of the other suggestions. These are all options. And then once you have all your options up there, you look and you star the best possible options that you want to continue to look at. Now, I had parents, as I've given this workshop, and professionals ask, well, a lot of times we're in just such a click, 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 click mode. This is how the process goes. No, we do this, we do this. How do we get people to open up to even start thinking about brainstorming? So here are some possible questions you can ask. I don't feel we have come up with a solution we can live with. Could we brainstorm some more solutions? I feel there are more options that we have to investigate. Could we brainstorm some more solutions? Or how about, my student is still not meeting the state-approved grade level achievement standards. Boy, wouldn't you sound intelligent that way? Are there other known reasons or solutions we need to come up with to solve the problem? All of those would work, wouldn't they? And get people thinking outside of their tunnel, because we do, let's face it, we kind of have a format for the individualized education plan. They definitely have a format with vocational rehabilitation. They have a format with the Division of Services for People with Disabilities. And it's all, get in there, this is the basic format that we've been trained in. So it's really hard to get a professional to start thinking outside and to start thinking, hey, we're going to do some brainstorming, guys, let's have fun. But brainstorming can be fun, and you can come up with some good conclusions and options. The next section is evaluation and analysis. And this is a very important area. And I want to tell you, this is an area that's come out of what's called response to intervention, out of the specific learning disabilities area. A lot more information has changed, and this is the one section that I've done some changes in this training in because of new research and methods that have come out of here. Evaluation analysis, a decision and commitment is still not made at this point, by the way. At every point when we've done this training and we have groups get together and try to work through the methods, they've all wanted to make a decision at the interest point, at the solution point, at the option point. We're still evaluation and analysis. If you were buying a new car, would you just go to the car lot and buy the first car that's there? What would you need to do? What would you want to do before you bought that car?
Do your research.
What kind of research?
Edmonds.com.
Okay, you go to the computer and do some research. What else would you do?
Well, I think very first you need to know what size you need. Like, I would start just by looking at my own family. How many kids do I have, and how much storage room do I need, and do we go on trips? Do we need a tow package? You know, like I would start there, and then from that place I would go to Ashley's Edmonds and start looking at, you know, like gas mileage and prices and how many seat belts, you know, like just the other technical stuff.
Okay, good. One size doesn't fit all.
And I would talk to other people that have the car I'm thinking I might buy, just to see if they've been happy with their car. It's word of mouth.
Good. You talk to other people and see if it worked. If that wasn't the first year model and it kept on breaking down, right?
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Those are all good items that you would do. So evaluation and analysis is when you compare possible solutions that you've looked at. And you look at the criteria. What criteria are you going to need to know about this solution to know if it's a good solution for you? What possible research is there out there on the computer? What research can you get from the Utah State Office of Education? What research can you get from the U.S. Office of Education, or from the Utah, or from the U.S. Office of Rehabilitation, or whatever government agency, the Office of Civil Rights, do you need to know that this is a good program? What interests are there around the table that need to be met? Like Jody was talking about, what type of seat belts, what type of shape, what type of size, and what type of evaluations have been done? What do you know about the student's needs to the issue or problem to stimulate improvement in the plan? Or another way to say it, that was big words, language that the education field uses, is how well does this solution or option meet both our mutual and separate interests, fit the criteria, and solve the problem? How well is this going to solve, how well is this option going to solve the problem for all of us? And that's what evaluation and analysis does. So before you make a decision, you feel good walking out of that room that you know that that's going to be a good solution. So when you do evaluation and analysis, you want to ask some of the following. Have previous supports and programs been tried and used with Fidelity? What does Fidelity know? Do any of you know?
Using the whole program, not just bits and pieces of different ones, but using it, the program the way it was intended by the creator.
Perfect, Rebecca. Using the program as it was intended by the person that created the program and using it consistently.
Yeah.
Not using one copy-paged of this program and another copy-paged of this program and saying, well, that program didn't work. Super, that was super. And then what else would you ask? What does current data show? What kind of data could you have on your student? What type of classroom data could you have on your student?
Time on task.
Okay, time on tasks. That would be observable data, right? Somebody observed to see how well they're completing their tasks.
And how well they're responding to and understanding what's being taught. Like for
Okay.
my child, they always show us graphs, and it doesn't always go up. You know, some days my kids have lower days and higher days, but overall the line goes up as it goes up and down some, so I know that they're improving continually, so it's working for them.
Oh, that's cool. So they're doing graphs, and so they can show you data of how well they're behaving back and forth and keeping attention. That's great. Okay, so what does current data show? And does more data need to be collected? What if you get into a meeting and they go, well, we just know because we've seen your student, and your students just, we know they're doing good. Well, how do you know they're doing good? What tests can you show me? What homework can you show me? Can you show me writing examples? Have you observed them in the classroom? Can you show me grades? Can you show me how they've done on tests? What are the results of evaluation and assessments that my students taken? Look at attendance, look at achievement, look at behavior, look at lack of instruction. Now, what would happen if you were looking at a student that was going through transition or was getting ready for employment? What would you look at then?
What their current skill level is.
What their current skill level is,
What their interests are.
what
so
their
you can
interests are.
Put them together.
Yeah, what their interests are, what their talents are. Maybe how well they communicate. Can they fill out a job application? Can they do the wash? Can they live on their own? How do they get around in the community? Okay, those would be the type of evaluations assessments. Jody?
And then also, when you look at all that, then say, are there companies that hire individuals, you know, even for training, or are there other agencies that can help support them to get to their end result goal?
Okay, good. Good answer. Okay, then you want to ask, are there personnel qualified to provide the program you want? What happens if you live in Tapioca, Utah, and there's no, it's actually Tabiola, isn't it? Tabiona, Utah, And there are no speech and language professionals. They travel around and come to your school once a week. And you want somebody to do sign language training with that student daily. And there's no qualified professional to provide the program. Jody.
Could you ask if there's an option of like a pre-recorded program that they can work on through the week and then use the professional once a week? I mean,
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, so you're coming up with a creative solution. We had one parent that lived in a small rural district in Utah, had a child with very high medical needs that needed an occupational therapist each day. And it was very important that she have an occupational therapist, because when an aide was trained, if the aide did it wrong, it could really hurt the child. She came up and got funding from the state legislature to provide a long-distance occupational therapist program where the occupational therapist would get on at the Department of Health and be able to see the child by computer each day and be able to provide the therapy through computer and see the child long distance from Salt Lake. And that program was provided to several children long distance in the rural communities. So a lot of things can happen. Are there appropriate materials available? Is the solution based on research? And has it been used successfully? Or is this some program that you've heard about sometime and there hasn't been a lot of research done on it? And then the biggest one is, does this work with my child's disability, learning style, and strengths? What might work for one child as you continue to do this might not work for your child because of their particular disability. So those are all things to ask as you're evaluating each of these programs. You might say, oh, this reading program's the best. But you might find out through research that it's for children that have visual processing, and your child can't process anything visually. It's not going to work for your child. So you need to do research. Everybody else needs to do research about the options and solutions. Evaluation and analysis. In evaluation analysis, we agree, build, and compare. We agree and select the best ideas. We agree on what issues need to be researched and what data or further evaluation or observations need to be made. We build on multiple information, multiple resources, and research. We build questions that still need to be answered. We compare different options and compare interests one last time. You go back around and say, remember when we talked about the interest? Okay, we've now talked about the data, we've talked about the research, we've talked about, is this a research-based program? Has it been, and all those different things. Now, is this going to meet the interests of each person that's going to be working on this? And you go back through and look at those things and star the best ideas and answer any last questions. Now, I have learned the following from working at the state legislature, and it's things that we all need to keep in mind. In evaluation and analysis, there are resources and limitations. As much as we want to say, we want X program for our child, and I don't care how much it costs, you will provide it in the school system. That's not always realistic, let's face it. And sometimes it can't be done because there might be federal or state laws that say this cannot be done in the classroom. So make sure you know your federal and state laws. Make sure that you know you're not asking for something that the school district, that vocational rehabilitation, that another state agency honestly cannot provide, because there are laws against it, or district laws. It's also wise for you to know the federal, state, and district laws, or the state agency laws, so you know what they can do. Qualifications and eligibility. Are there certain qualifications to be eligible for a program or for services? Are there requirements for the program? And let's get realistic. Just like you saying, I had 4 boys. Every one of those boys, there wasn't one of them that didn't need help in homework, all the way through high school. My husband would get home and we'd divide up I'd get the English and the history, he'd get the math and the science. And we'd divide it up and we'd literally sit at the table all night. I read the history book 4 times, American history. If you don't think I wasn't sick of it, believe me, I was. In high school, I knew my American history. Time is also an issue for educators. It's an issue for vocational rehabilitation counselors who have a caseload of 200 individuals on their caseload. Can you imagine just sending back 200 emails a day, let alone anything else? Time is an issue. Training. What training is needed? What training is needed for a regular educator who has their first child with autism in their classroom for the first time and has never had a child with autism? What training do they need at the first of the school year, not at the end of the school year after they've dealt with that child all year? What funding is there to go with those children? Or adults with disabilities? What other resources can be given or brainstormed that you need to know about? Or is there evaluations or testing or data that's saying one thing when you're saying as a parent, wait a minute, no, I want this, and they're saying, but wait a minute, the data is showing this. Those are all things that you need to understand, but don't think of them as limitations. Think about it as knowing about them, learning about them, so you can get creative and you can get involved. The more I've learned about federal laws, the more I've been able to advocate for my children, because then I know what's possible. Be sure to attend workshops, conferences, find out, read, call the Utah Parent Center, get involved, find out about what the law says about individualized education plans. Because the more I know, the more I can say, well, wait a minute, that's not true. You can do that, and it says that on this law. And it's surprising how many people really don't understand the law. We assume that as professionals they have learned it back and forth, but that's not true. As parents, you will probably know more about the state and federal laws that affect your children with disabilities than anybody else will know. So get to learn them. They will help you in a lot of ways. Evaluation and analysis. If you don't understand why something's not happening, you might want to ask a professional. Are there certain federal laws, state laws, or district laws that I don't know about that are keeping you from going with a particular solution? They might say, well, actually, you know, there is this district law. And you might want to go back and say, well, you know, is there a way that we can work with that? Do we need to bring in the district special educator to help us with the solution? Do we need to bring somebody in from the district that can help us? That doesn't mean that's the end-all, be-all. That means that you might need to bring somebody from higher up into the discussion to see how you can work with it. Become educated. Join an advocacy group. It's well worth your time and money to join an advocacy group, to talk to other parents that have already been through what you've been through, that have teenagers when you have young children, that have young adults working when you have teenagers, that you can talk to those parents, that you can call them when you have questions, that you can find out about their conferences and workshops. Find out about that information. It'll make a difference in your child's life that's huge. I know that when my son was little and that he was diagnosed with a learning disability, he was in 3rd grade and he couldn't read, he couldn't write, he couldn't tell you how old he was. He counted on his fingers in 3rd grade, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and went up to 8. He never was part of the ABC club, never part of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 club. Never part of any of those things. And as we were starting to have his IEP meeting, they said, well, there's another girl in the classroom that's worse than him. We don't know if we should have him get services. And I just thought, well, wait a minute, that means she needs services. And I felt like there was no hope for my son. But what happened is I joined an advocacy organization, and there were parents sitting on that board that had teenagers that said, no, my child's now doing this, they're reading this. Have you tried books on tape? Have you tried the Library for the Blind? Have you gone to this state conference? Have you gone to this national conference? Did you know if you get on this website, you can go here and learn about this disability? And it made all the difference in the world. And my son ended up graduating and taking AP classes. He ended up graduating cum laude from the university, and he's done really well. But he never would have if I hadn't gotten involved in that advocacy organization and if I hadn't learned about his disability. Note the difference between mandated and eligibility programs with state agencies. Mandated programs are what you get in special education and education programs. Mandated programs are programs that are required to serve all individuals who meet the eligibility criteria, regardless of funding. So if your child meets the criteria for special education services, or for Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, they have to provide those services for your child in the school. However, when your child graduates at age 18 or gets a certificate of completion at age 22, they graduate into the adult services world of adult services, and those are eligibility programs. And eligibility programs are programs that have eligibility requirements and waiting lists. The Division of Services for People with Disabilities has a waiting list. Vocational rehabilitation here in the state of Utah currently does not have a waiting list. However, their federal law says they can go to an order of selection and a waiting list. Different federal laws for adult services say they can have waiting lists, that there are different eligibility requirements. The Department of Mental Health, Community Mental Health Services, provide services for those that have Medicaid or SSI or SSDI. They're able to put those eligibility mandates on the programs because they have limited funding. So be aware of those different types of things so you know how to get the services that you need and get what you want for your child. The next step is the second to last step, and this is consensus and commitment. And I want to give you a warning here. Consensus is the hardest step. It's usually an emotional time, and feelings will be close to the surface. So if you're sitting with another parent, helping them with their individualized education plan or with services, or you as a parent are sitting in a consensus meeting in a strategic plan, or you're a professional, don't be surprised if emotions come up to the surface in consensus, because this is where everybody's going to make the final decision. This is where everything you've talked about is going to be decided. And it can be emotional because this is the time. Consensus is achieved when each group member can honestly say, and I want to warn you, consensus does not mean that it'll necessarily be your first pick or that it'll be your favorite pick. The consensus means, I believe you have heard and understand my point of view. I believe that you understand the other person's point of view and interests. I believe the process was fair and open and everybody was heard. I understand the solutions that were suggested. Commitment is achieved when each group member can say, if I don't agree with the group, I will explain why and continue communicating until we come to consensus. I won't walk away and say, oh, I didn't agree, but I just wasn't going to say anything, but I'm not going to work with it. Or I'm just going to walk away. It means that I will continue to work with this group until we can come to consensus. It also means I like this solution, and listen to this part, I can live with it for now. That might mean that you're only going to live with it for 6 weeks if the group decides we're going to give it a try. But you can live with it for now. And the final one is that you will work with the group to achieve the success of the solution. You won't work against the solution. You will honestly give that solution a try. And that's what consensus and commitment means. Now, this final area, a lot of times we think as a group, yay, we've reached consensus, we've made a commitment, we're done. But that's not where it ends. How do we know that the option we picked was the right option? How do we know that it's going to work? How do we know that we don't want our child sitting in a program that we've made this decision and that a year from now our child hasn't made any progress? That's not a very good solution. So we want to implement decisions and monitor progress. And so this is a step that is rarely not taken by the groups, and yet it's one of the most vital steps that needs to be taken. And what this step is detailed procedures are outlined, responsibilities are given, deadlines are decided upon, and a plan is made and decided when parent parties will get together again to determine progress and what data will be collected. Or in other words, how will you follow up? If you want people to feel accountable, you must give them the opportunity to account. And that's from a book called Crucial Conversations, which is an excellent book. Implementing decisions and monitoring progress. Make a plan, and this isn't part of the IEP, so you need to bring in an extra paper and say, hey, guess what, guys? We're going to do an extra step here in our individualized education plan. Who's going to do what? Is the classroom teacher going to be doing this step? Is the speech language professional going to be doing this step? What am I going to be doing as a parent? What steps is my child expected to do? And what are they supposed to do? What is the special educator supposed to do? Is the special educator going to hand out a list of accommodations for the 7 teachers so they know what accommodations happen in each classroom? And by when is this going to be done? Is this going to happen tomorrow? Well, that's kind of quick. Is it going to happen in 2 weeks? What date are we going to put? And how will progress or no progress be recorded? What kind of data are we going to collect? How often will the data be recorded? Are we going to record it once a week? Are we going to record it daily? Are we going to record it every 3 weeks? Who's going to record the data? And what's it going to look like? And how are we going to know it's working? When will progress be reported? Is it going to be reported at parent-teacher conferences? Is progress going to be reported once a month? Are we going to have progress reported when we implement one of the decisions? And then how is progress going to be reported? Are you going to just send the parents an email or the other teachers an email? Or is it going to be by phone? Are you going to put a note in my student's book bag? Oops, that's not going to work. Nothing gets home in my student's book bag. We'll never see it again. It goes into the note bag and goes out and we never see it again. Okay, that solution doesn't work. Are you going to visit? Are we going to get back together? Are we going to report? And when is the team going to get back together? All of those things you need to think about. You're giving people a chance to report, and you're putting them on the line to say, we're going to get back and report on these solutions. There's been too much work that's been put into this to just say, we recorded this IEP. Now, hey, we'll see you next year at my child's birthday. How are we going to know that this reading program worked for my child? So we've talked about a lot of steps today. We talked about coming together, and can anybody think of the first step that we had? Was at the beginning.
Finding the interests?
Finding interests, good, that was excellent. The very first one was seek to understand, and the second one was finding interests. Good, determine interests. Does anybody remember the third step? Tell your story, okay? And then it was invent options. And evaluate criteria, consensus and commitment, implement decisions, and monitor progress. Henry Ford said, coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is process. Working together is success. I hope all of you will remember these different steps and work to implement them as you have crucial conversations with different professionals and with your families or your teenagers in your world. Thank you.